What's up, guys? It's your boy Chrysalis here, and this is going to be a brief video on what movies I have been watching in theaters, specifically what movies that have came out that I watched in theaters. I have, of course, been watching other movies in theaters as well as just movies at home, so if you're curious about that, I will be leaving my Letterboxd in the description below. But as I am turning my gaze on what movies are coming out in 2025, I thought it would be important to let you guys know what movies I have already seen in theaters. Specifically movies that I personally would consider to be movies that are of 2025. Some of these you could probably make the argument that they're technically like 2024 movies, but they debuted at like a film festival or they were in limited theaters, very limited theaters. But these are what I consider to be movies of 2025, and these are going to be my thoughts on them. Anyhow, with that out of the way, let's get started. The first movie I'm going to cover is a movie called Presence. Presence is the latest film, one of two movies that Steven Soderbergh is putting out this year. He's got Black Bag coming out in, I think, a couple weeks or so. But Presence is his very first one of the year. It's really good. I definitely recommend it. Kind of a neat little spin on the ghost story or spectral drama or supernatural drama, if you will, where our main character is a ghost that has no face, does not make a sound aside from like some vibrations, and we are experiencing the story from its point of view. And I think Soderbergh did a great job with Presence. It's definitely unlike most anything I've seen. Probably the closest that I can think that is the closest to Presence was a movie called In a Violent Nature, but I didn't really like that movie all that much. I think the concept of having it being at the ghost's point of view or the killer's point of view or what have you is interesting, but sometimes the execution falls flat. That is definitely not the case with Presence, and if it's on digital or what have you, definitely watch it. If it's miraculously playing at a theater near you, then yeah, you should definitely go see it. As well as a movie called Companion. You should definitely go see Companion. This is the latest film, and I believe his directorial debut from Drew Hancock. Specifically, the movie stars Sophie Thatcher, who's a scream queen, as well as Jack Quaid. And again, I also really dug this movie. Definitely has elements of like Terminator and Blade Runner. I think what's really interesting about this day and age is there seems to be a fascination with AI and robots that kind of reminds me of a similar fascination with a similar subject back in the 80s. But needless to say, this fascination is a lot more relevant now than it was back then. But yeah, no, Companion was really great. I thought it was hilarious, it was gory, it was brutal. Sophie Thatcher killed it in this movie. If you haven't seen Companion yet, you definitely should. Unless you're squeamish about like blood and stuff, in which case, I get it. And also, if you're squeamish about blood, you should also avoid The Monkey. Monkey is the adaptation of the short story by Stephen King of the same name, but don't go into it thinking it is a straight adaptation of that short story. Osgood Perkins, director of Longlegs, just takes the story and creates something entirely new out of it, while still, keeping true to the characters' names as well as just the nature of the monkey. And oh my god, is it hilarious. You wouldn't think a movie that is this twisted and violent and gory would be as funny as it is, but holy hell it is. It's macabre humor and dark humor like this that reminds me a lot of the Coen brothers, like with Burn After Reading or Fargo. So it's really refreshing to see this take on horror after a lot of A24 stuff, as hit or miss as those are, just being so atmospheric and serious and brooding. The Monkey definitely takes the genre and just does a whole 180 on that kind of direction that horror's been going lately. So a huge shout out to The Monkey. I'd say so far it's my favorite movie that I saw in theaters this year. So yeah, definitely check The Monkey out. Alright, we are now coming to our first dud. Similar to Companion, this is also another directorial debut by Jonathan Eusebio. I've butchered his name, probably. But namely, Love Hurts stars Ke Huy Quan and Ariana DeBose, as well as Sean Astin and Marshawn Lynch. That Marshawn Lynch really getting into acting. I commend him for it. And I just didn't like this movie. I think there was an idea somewhere, but it was just half-baked. And there just ended up being more talk and more just dialogue and stuff, and just no action for a movie about there being this normal guy, but also he's simultaneously a badass. There just isn't a whole lot of badassery on his end. It also just feels like a lot of the actors didn't really have like much of any chemistry whatsoever. Yeah, wasn't a fan of Love Hurts. If it's playing in a theater near you, just skip it. Like, I kind of went into watching the movie on the basis of, oh, it's Ke Huy Quan in an action film. I want to see him kick some ass. And there just wasn't as much ass kicking as there ought to have been. And because of that, a lot of the glaring flaws of the film just reared its ugly head. And just so many narrative arcs that just conclude out of nowhere, and just so little character development as well. Yeah, just skip Love Hurts. Next up, we have a movie called My Dead Friend Zoe. I believe this is also another directorial debut. Let me double check that real quick. Yep, this is the first ever movie from Kyle Hosman Stokes. Kind of a movie that is semi-autobiographical on his end, where he used to be in the military, and he knew a couple of his friends that killed themselves either after all was said and done in the line of duty or during the line of duty. I can't remember which. But My Dead Friend Zoe revolves around our main character, Merritt, played by Sonequa Martin Green, kind of hallucinating her former, best friend in the military, Zoe. And it's just an overall a pretty good movie about confronting grief. I just feel like that it should have pumped the brakes on a lot of dark comedy that it goes for, because in my opinion the movie shines best as more of a drama with undertones of humor and comedy with it, as opposed to just our Zoe character just being like a punchline here and there. Outside of that, really good late performance from Ed Harris. Just always love to see Ed Harris just still kicking in terms of acting, as well as a surprise performance from Morgan Freeman. His character doesn't really have like that much time to shine, but it wasn't that necessary. But yeah, I thought this movie was pretty good. If it's playing in a theater near you, definitely give it the one watch. You might get something more out of it than I did. And of course, it would not be 2025 without our first Marvel movie, Captain America: Brave New World. I thought this was just okay. I may do a video further explaining this later, but Brave New World in so many ways doesn't really do a whole lot to syndicate itself as something standalone, and definitely just kind of autopilots as what feels like a filler episode in our ever-turning Marvel Cinematic Universe machine. That being said, I wasn't really too mad at a lot of the writing, and the story was engaging enough for me to at least come out of it thinking it was okay and liking it. Add to that, Harrison Ford had a really good performance, and Anthony Mackie as our new Captain America as Sam Wilson definitely shows a lot of promise as we are getting more movies coming out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as Thunderbolts and the Fantastic Four are supposed to be dropping this year. While I can't say that Brave New World sets a strong precedent for what we are to expect from Marvel throughout the rest of the year, it definitely is a pretty okay movie. And finally, this was a movie I actually caught just a couple of days ago at a Screen Unseen called Novocaine. Novocaine is the latest film from director duo Dan Burke and Robert Olson. Can't say I've really watched so many of their movies, but apparently Significant Other and Villains were both really good. But of course our movie stars Jack Quaid in it. It has Jacob Batalon, who, if that name sounds familiar, he was Ned in the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. And it also has the son of Jack Nicholson, Ray Nicholson, who he's kind of been making a name for himself lately just as like a supporting actor role, having previously starred in Smile 2. And I believe he has another movie coming out starring Samara Weaving, but the name is escaping me at this moment in time. But as far as what I thought of Novocaine, I thought it had a pretty strong premise, and it definitely did not start like I figured it would. But as the movie kept going, the more its flaws were definitely showing, and while I definitely came out of it thinking it was okay, I probably wouldn't watch it again. I think once the gimmick of the fact that our main character cannot feel pain, as well as just treating his genetic disorder as kind of a superpower of sorts, the rest of the film definitely just kind of falls apart a little bit. But definitely not as bad or corny as I thought it was going to end up being. So if you're thinking about watching this movie, since I think it officially releases next weekend, definitely give it the one watch, and maybe you might like it more than I did, but I thought it was just alright. I actually have one more movie I want to talk about, and I'm gonna make this a little brief to not extend the video out more than I already am. I watched a movie yesterday called The Rule of Jenny Penn that stars Jeffrey Rush and John Lithgow in it, and I liked it quite a bit, actually. It's a really interesting movie about aging and kind of just coming to terms with not being like the spry spring chicken that you used to be. Essentially, the movie is where Jeffrey Rush is a judge that has a stroke and is terrorized by John Lithgow along with like a lot of other people in the nursing home. And Lithgow is just absolutely unhinged in the film, and I just really liked it a lot. Jeffrey Rush also had a commanding performance, and I haven't really seen him in a movie in a hot minute for one reason or another. So it's really nice to see him still kicking, and overall the plot felt pretty kind of predictable, but it nails it with atmosphere, it nails it with the cinematography, and it nails it with, of course, our two commanding performances. So if you are near a theater that is showing The Rule of Jenny Penn, definitely go watch it. It's really good. I recommend it. Anyhow, that is indeed about it. That is all the movies that came out in 2025, or at least what I consider to have came out in 2025 that I watched in theaters. Tell me what movies that you watched in theaters that came out in 2025 and what you thought of them, and what did you think of the movies that I saw as well. I'm going to try to make this more of a monthly video series as opposed to bi-monthly, but I had the series going on, and usually January and February pretty slow for film, but surprisingly had a lot of bangers in that time period as well. Anyway, that's about it. Consider liking the video if you like the video. Consider subscribing if you want to see more of me. And yeah, I hope you're having a wonderful day. This is your boy Chrysalis here, signing off.